Consumers are urged to return the product to retailers for a full refund. There are no confirmed illnesses reported so far, and the recall is a precautionary action to safeguard infant health. Yeah, let's be safe rather than sorry on that one.
Yeah, it is pretty scary, and
And then you're going to question what they actually put in these infant
yeah,
formulas.
and can I tell you how expensive those formulas are now?
Yeah.
It's pretty scary, and I thank God for nature, particularly women's ability to breastfeed and to breastfeed for a significant period of time, because without that, and if you relied totally on formula, there'd be a lot of children actually in serious trouble. So,
Right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. We'll do this again tomorrow. That's Friday after the 6 a.m. news. Coming up, Peter, our colleague, gets into conversation with our analyst on Thursdays on the Central African region of the continent. That's Aaron Gambi. Stay tuned for that.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za. As the sun rises on 2026, Channel Africa celebrates with you. This year, may prosperity flow like water. May unity strengthen our nations. And may every African story inspire the world.
Channel Afrique vous accompagne dans cette célébration. Que l'espoir illumine notre continent.
Que as vozes de África ecoem com orgulho.
Ustawi na ufanisi na vitiririke kama maji.
From all of us at Channel Africa, we wish you and yours a joyful, successful, and prosperous 2026.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's time now for us to focus on Central Africa, a region where diplomacy, security, and economic power are shifting in subtle but significant ways. From new embassies and changing alliances to energy deals, military cooperation, and even the relocation of national capitals. These are not isolated developments, but signals perhaps of deeper strategic movements across the region. Well, to make sense of some of what's driving these changes and what they tell us about the Central Africa region's direction, we're now joined by geopolitical analyst Aaron Mugambi. Aaron, a happy new year. I hope you had a safe and peaceful passage into 2026.
Thank you, Peter, and happy new year to you as well. Yes, it's been a safe and pleasant transition into the new year.
Yeah, so let's start with this Chad's statement expressing deep concern after the US military's action in Venezuela. I'm wondering, though, is this primarily about defending international law and state sovereignty, or could this also be about concern over the fate of the legitimacy of President Nicolas Maduro?
Yeah, so as you will remember, not long ago, actually on Christmas Day, the Trump administration bombed Nigeria. And they bombed Nigeria on the pretext that they were trying to help the government of Nigeria and also save Christians from jihadist attacks. And Chad is not far from Nigeria. Therefore, I think that the statement by Chad through the Foreign Affairs Minister to express concern about the US's conduct and capture and actually kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro is not coming from without. It seems like now with Trump in office for the second time, it doesn't seem like anyone is safe. If you become a target of the United States government now, all sorts of things can happen to you. Remember, we were told when this began that Maduro is actually a leader of a cartel, a drug cartel that's been sending drugs to the United States from Venezuela. Now, most experts have debunked that. That is not true. The little amount of drugs that come from Venezuela cannot be compared with the drugs from Mexico, Colombia, and other places in Latin America that come to the US. So for the longest time, Trump was he was setting the stage and trying to look for justification to go and remove Nicolas Maduro from power, because for the longest time, the US have been wanting to change the regime in Venezuela and be able to lay their hands on the oil reserves that are in that country. So I think that Chad is condemnation of Trump's kidnapping of Maduro is in fact coming from a legitimate concern of what the international community is looking like now under the Trump administration.
Yeah, one gets a sense it's going to be quite an interesting year in terms of how America is seen, both domestically and internationally. Let's talk a little bit more about Chad. A decision to open its first permanent embassy in Cotonou comes at a time of shifting alliances in the region, in the Sahel and Central Africa. The question is, why Benin and why now? What's the message that's coming through, do you think?
Yeah, so interestingly, actually, Chad has not just opened up this embassy in Benin, but they've been closing embassies in other places. And this is because of budgetary constraints. So it is interesting to see that they open one in Benin, and this will cater for countries such as Togo, Ghana, and other surrounding countries. Benin is strategic to Chad, and I think that that's one of the reasons why they've picked to go to Benin rather than any other country in that region. Now, why now? The ministry, the Foreign Affairs Ministry in Chad, have actually alluded to the fact that this is a better time for them to strengthen relations with the Republic of Benin, and that this will improve their bilateral relations and enhance the strategic cooperation. This embassy, like I said, is going to cater for at least 3-4 countries around the Republic of Benin and close to Chad. But interestingly, they're closing other embassies because they seem not to have funding to run these embassies in other places. So it seems like this is a significant thing for them to do.
Central African Republic. Now, this government is openly discussing a drone training center with Russia. And I wonder how much this deepens Moscow's influence on the ground. And does this change security balance in the country?
No, this is not surprising for the Central African Republic because even President Touadera himself, by the way, he just won a third term. He initially was supposed to have only served 2 terms. Then, therefore, the constitution was changed and allowed him to go for a third term. So he just won a third term as of last month. In fact, he won by 76.5% of the votes. But he himself has been heavily supported and sponsored by Russia, the Federal Republic of Russia, and the Russian Federation. And then not only that, his personal presidential guards have been associated with the Wagner Group, which you remember, a mercenary group from the Russian Federation. And so for him to call for this military cooperation and actually saying that they want to establish a training site or camp or center for these drones, military drones in the Central African Republic for them to enhance the security and so on and so forth. It doesn't come as a surprise to people that have followed the politics and the security concerns of that region. So Central African Republic is one of the countries in Central Africa that has deep ties with the Russian Federation. In fact, President Touadera himself made this announcement when he appeared on a Russia state television while he was in the Russian Federation in Moscow.
So the oil giant Shell has taken over oil stakes in Angola, previously held by Chevron. Does this move signal renewed confidence in Angola's energy sector, or perhaps simply a reshuffling amongst global oil giants?
This is more of the same. In fact, they have taken about 35% of the stakes. in Chevron. And this is offshore oil drilling. And this is, to be precise, they are looking at trying to expand and tap into the potential of Angola in the oil production. But I don't think we're going to see anything really significant in terms of how the oil production benefits the livelihoods of the ordinary people. Because for the longest time, Angola hasn't been able to get their natural resources, oil and gas, and be able to get as much from that, either through taxes or through investments, to be able to improve the livelihoods of the people. So I think this is more one and the same. I think it's just one international company passing on the baton to the next.
Equatorial Guinea, very interesting, has moved its capital from Malabo to, I've got to get this right, Ciudad de la Paz. Why do you think this has happened? Is there a political, strategic calculation behind this move? Who is the president trying to impress? Citizens or history? What's going on?
Yeah, the president of Equatorial Guinea has done that by issuing a presidential decree. Now, he claims that this has been a long time coming. It's actually been in the works for the last 2 decades. So he says this is overdue, and the only reason they've given is that Malabo is on an island, while the new capital city will be on the mainland of Equatorial Guinea. And also they've cited issues such as Malabo really increasing rapidly and not being able to have sufficient space, or I guess sufficient areas where they can house all the government institutions and be able to be the capital city. So he wants to move it into the mainland and be able to accommodate all government institutions in this new capital city. But it doesn't come as, something that was expected by many. And so we're yet to see how the population will respond to that.
Okay, and perhaps finally, the week ahead, maybe in near future as well. What should we be looking out for? What's on your radar in terms of Central Africa?
We're still with the Rwanda and the DR Congo conflict in the eastern part of the Congo. With the M23, I think that is going to be headlines going into the next week, and in fact in the new year. If you recall, we ended last year with the rebels, the M23, taking over the last major city in the eastern part of the DR Congo. That is something that we'll still be watching for. And also we expect a few developments in places such as Gabon. It has a new government there from a military regime, and they changed into a civilian rule. And it seems like they're making some progress in terms of economic investments. So those places are places to look out for. And I think that outside of the Central Africa, we may look at what may happen in Uganda after the election on the 15th of January. So if the odd man stays, or if Bobby Wine will be able to unseat Museveni, that is something that would be exciting to see.
Aaron, always great talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for your insightful updates on what's happening in the region. Thanks so much, and have a great year ahead, brother.
Thank you very much, Peter. Good to see you in 2026, and happy Friday Eve, as you say.
Yes, indeed. That's Aaron Ngambi, a geopolitical analyst, taking a look at the Central African region for us, and a lot of shifts, fascinating shifts taking place in the region there. And after so many years of independence, Equatorial Guinea shifting its capital city. That was interesting to observe. And of course, Chad. New embassies, but also shutting down some because of affordability. I guess it's all about a strategic intent, and also noting Russia's increasing influence in the region. That's your Central Africa roundup, and we'll have another one next week, Thursday. It's 6:30, which means it's time for your news headlines. And we say good morning once again to Jualane Tulo Ngwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, a court in Nigeria has granted bail to the country's former Attorney General Abubakar Malami, along with his wife and son, who are facing money laundering charges. The National Consumer Commission in South Africa has announced the recall of a specific batch of non-Special Pro HA infant formula sold across the country and exported to Namibia and Eswatini. And finally, Britain's Ministry of Defence says it supported U.S. efforts to seize the Russian-flagged tanker in the North Atlantic. The U.S. seized 2 oil tankers with connections to Venezuela yesterday. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now we get our first full bulletin for this this Thursday morning. Here's Fikile Lingwati to get us updated.
Live from Morocco, Neto Chemane takes you straight into the heart of the AFCON.
Absolutely extraordinary.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We begin with football news. World Football's governing body FIFA has announced that the AI-enabled 3D avatars will be created for every player competing at this year's Men's World Cup. FIFA's official technology partner for the FIFA World Cup 2026 and the FIFA Women's World Cup 2027, Lenovo, provides AI-enabled devices, infrastructure, software, solutions and services at FIFA 2 flagship competitions and across World Football's governing body. They are intended to help improve video assistant referee VAR decisions. The process will see all 1,200 players have a digital scan taken of their bodies. Now, cricket news. South Africa's under-19 bowling all-rounder Ntando Soni has credited his single mother's support for his path towards a professional cricketing career. Soni will be representing South Africa at the ICC Under-19 World Cup in Zimbabwe and Namibia starting next week and is hoping for performances that can make his family proud while helping the team win the trophy. Both his mother and sister traveled to Johannesburg from Durban to attend the team's capping ceremony, with Soni saying they have played a major role in his cricket.
A massive one. Since I was young, I think those were the only 2 people that supported me throughout the way. Obviously, it wasn't looking like much of a job out of school. Obviously, I loved the sport growing up, and my mom supported me, my sister supported me. I grew up with a single mom as well, so her support really meant a lot. And what happened off the field, I could really take onto the field in terms of my character development, my grit, my determination, and here I am today representing the country.
Some more cricket news. Bangladesh Cricket says it is in talks with the governing body, the ICC, seeking practical solutions to its request to move its T20 World Cup matches out of India. India forced Bangladesh fast bowler Mustafizur Rahman to quit the Indian Premier League IPL on Saturday, prompting anger in Dhaka. With ties tense between the 2 countries, Bangladesh wants the ICC to shift their World Cup games from India to co-host Sri Lanka, citing security concerns. The World Cup begins on the 7th of February, and Bangladesh are scheduled to play their 4 group matches in India. Senior Bangladesh Cricket Board official Nazmul Abedin Fahim says talks were ongoing with the ICC regarding security issues. And finally, with tennis news, former world number 1 Daniil Medvedev extended his impressive start to the season ahead of the Australian Open with a straight sets win over Francis Tiafoe in Brisbane. The top seed took just an hour to defeat the American 6-3 and 6-2 following his equally ruthless first-round win over Hungary's Marton Fucsovics on Monday. Medvedev served superbly against Tiafoe and didn't face a break point in reaching the 3rd round. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Cheers to rest and renewal. Festive African greetings from Channel Africa. Go on, download the Channel Africa app.
One of the stories we'll be looking at on Rise and Shine is wider access to accurate and safe glucose monitoring systems or monitors. That's a call in the country of South Africa, where the glucose monitors known as CGMs are not exactly essential healthcare devices. Currently, they are lifestyle products. So there are those who are calling for a shift in that to make these more accessible. And diabetes, of course, in the country affecting 4 million people, and it's one of the leading causes of death. So we'll talk about that in just a bit.
The sound of Africa is evolving. Experience our new mobile app. Free to download, free to connect. Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Peta are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
You're listening to Channel Africa on channelafrica.co.za, and we continue with this story that takes us to South Africa. A South African alcohol harm reduction campaign is warning about the scale of alcohol consumption and spending in the country, particularly during the festive season. The Rethink Your Drink campaign says that in the days leading up to New Year's Eve, South Africans were spending an estimated $60 million a day on alcohol, highlighting what it describes as a pattern of intense short-term consumption linked to rising social harm. The campaign says that alcohol spending in South Africa now amounts to around $9 billion a year, raising concerns about public health, safety, and the economic cost of harmful drinking. Tutong Gobeni tells us more.
Rethink Your Drink campaign has raised the alarm on alcohol spending by South Africans during the festive season in periods leading up to New Year's Eve. The campaign says this period sees a spike in alcohol spending, with $60 million spent per day on alcohol, while $9 billion is the annual spend. The Rethink Your Drink campaign is an alcohol harm reduction campaign by DG Marais Trust in the Southern African nation, aimed at challenging norms, policies, and industry practices that promote and normalize heavy drinking. South Africa has a high rate of alcohol consumption, with an average of 7.8 liters per person annually, and ranks fifth globally in consumption per drinker at about 30 liters. The 7.8 liters per person per year is above the global average of 5.5 liters. Kashifa Ensa, manager of the campaign, says this is indicative of the large alcohol market in the country.
Data from trade intelligence, as reported in the media and analyzed by 8020 Consulting, shows that South Africans spend around 414 million rand on alcohol on average a day. When you analyze that daily figure, it amounts to roughly 150 billion rand a year in alcohol spending. That gives us a sense of just how large the alcohol market in South Africa is, particularly for the size of our economy being a middle-income country.
ANSA says the data from trade intelligence shows that South Africans spend around $25 million on alcohol on an average day, about $9 billion a year, with spending nearly tripling between Christmas and New Year's Day.
When we look at the 2024 numbers, data from trade intelligence as reported in the media and analyzed by 8020 Consulting, shows that South Africans spend around 414 million rand on alcohol on an average day, about 150 billion rand a year. During the week between Christmas and New Year, that spending rises sharply. The Department of Social Development reported for the 2024 period, 7.7 billion rand was spent on alcohol between 25 December and 1 January. So when we compare that weekly total with the normal daily average, it shows that alcohol spending nearly triples during this period, which means that on peak days leading up to New Year's Eve, daily spending exceeds 1 billion rand a day. This spike is driven by a few intense buying days, rather than being evenly spread across the week.
ANSA says the spending on alcohol between the two biggest holidays in December is intense and described as a critical consumption window.
Spending in general would increase over the entire festive season, but the spike that we're seeing and the spike that's been reported doesn't necessarily apply to the entire festive season when it comes to alcohol spending. So trade intelligence data, weekly alcohol spending nearly triples within the period between Christmas and New Year from 25 December to 1 January. And it's a short, intense surge as opposed to a steady spending throughout December. So it's been described as a critical consumption window where drinking patterns and harm risks are at their highest, leading up to 1 January.
Meanwhile, a South African-based non-governmental organization, Gatekeepers, has written to President Cyril Ramaphosa proposing that the legal drinking age be raised from 18 to between 21 and 23. The organization is calling for stricter regulation of alcohol sales and consumption to curb widespread alcohol abuse, which it says contributes to problems such as domestic violence and drunk driving, and argues that legislation has previously been effective in limiting cigarette advertising and could be used similarly to address alcohol-related harm. Founding director of Gatekeeper South Africa, Lizelle Maurice, says this will deter young people from drinking.
And peer group pressure is also a contributing factor. So if young people know that the legal age of drinking is 21 or 23, because we did say in our letter between 21 and 23, it will be a deterrent. You know, people will think, young people will think twice. Although I know even now with the legal limit of 18 years old, it's, young people, if they want to drink, they do indulge. But at least it's the first step in corrective action in trying to reduce the high rate of alcoholism, particularly amongst our youth population.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongobeni in Johannesburg.
South African diabetes advocacy groups are calling for continuous glucose monitors, known as CGMs, to be recognized as essential healthcare devices rather than lifestyle products. With diabetes now affecting more than 4 million people in South Africa and ranked as one of the country's leading causes of death, campaigners say wider access to accurate and safe glucose monitoring could prevent serious complications and save lives. Our reporter Lebogang Mabange has more.
Continuous glucose monitors, or CMGs, provide round-the-clock readings of a person's blood sugar levels and are increasingly used by people living with diabetes to manage their condition. But while advocacy groups are pushing for greater access to these devices, especially for children and insulin-dependent patients, concerns are growing about the safety and accuracy of some of the products entering the South African market. Kirsten de Klerk is the chairperson of SA Diabetes Advocacy.
I think that continuous glucose monitor should now be considered essential care rather than a lifestyle or luxury device, because not only does South Africa have over 4 million people living with diabetes, but it's also now the second leading cause of death for South Africans. So CGMs, or continuous glucose monitors, can prevent complications by enabling better control. So basically, diabetes complications such as kidney failure, blindness, amputations, heart disease, stroke, they're largely driven by long periods of high or low blood glucose levels. So by having continuous access to your glucose levels, this helps you prevent those long periods of high and low glucose levels, and this will then obviously improve the chances of reducing those risks of complications in the long term.
However, de Klerk Johannesburg warns that the growing availability of cheaper, less tested CMGs poses serious risks, particularly when devices fail to accurately detect dangerous blood sugar levels.
The real-world risks of inaccurate continuous glucose devices really does pose a great risk to people living with diabetes, and as you said, particularly children and insulin-dependent users that are using these devices. So the impact now is that if your continuous glucose monitor readings are not accurate, you could miss or wrongly treat dangerous glucose events. For instance, if you're having a very high or very low glucose level and your continuous glucose monitor is not picking up on that, you could be unfortunately mistreating or wrongly treating those events.
Advocacy groups say the problem is made worse by the absence of global safety or accuracy standards governing CMGs, leaving doctors, medical schemes, and public health officials uncertain about which devices can be trusted.
So there currently are no ISO standards globally for continuous glucose monitors. And what we're seeing specifically in the South African context when it comes to medical aid decision makers, healthcare professionals and doctors that prescribe these devices, as well as the public healthcare sector, is that it's becoming more difficult for the decision makers to know which devices to trust. As new and more different varieties of these devices come into the market, it's really difficult to know which devices should be prescribed, which ones are going to work best for people living with diabetes, and which have actually been tested accurately.
As pressure mounts on both the public healthcare system and private medical schemes, advocacy groups are urging policymakers to expand access to CMGs, but insist that patient safety and scientific standards must remain the priority. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
It's just gone over 6:47 Central African time. At Channel Africa 1 is our handle that you can connect with us and share your views and questions about our programming on Rise and Shine. How often do we get our diabetes checked, actually? I just had my blood pressure checked the other last month, I think it was.
I don't think we purposefully go and check blood sugar levels. We check other things like blood pressure.
Yeah.
But what I do find more and more now is when you visit the clinic for something else, one of the tests now is blood sugar levels. They're testing that quite a bit. But we should be testing. And the simple test actually is a prick of the finger and you can get a reading. And it could save your life.
Yeah, it absolutely could. I found out my blood pressure was high.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and
now I'm on
medication. A lot of
medication.
people are like that. Yeah,
Can you imagine?
A lot of people are like that. And sadly, most people find out when it's too late. Yeah.
Channel Africa sends you joy and good energy. This festive season, share your memories on our socials. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Channel Africa 1.
Nkhanza zokhudza amuna ndi azimayi kapena kuti gender-based violence GBV zikuwononga mioyo komanso kuphwasula midzi. Zikuchitika m'manyumba, m'masukulu, malo ogwirira ntchito ndipo kwambiri mwakachetechete. Koma sizikuyenera kupitirira. Mukazimva yankhulani. Ngati mwakhudzidwa funani chithandizo. Chifukwa kusachita chilichonse sikuthandiza. Mverani kuma wireless onse 10 asanu ndi anayi a SABC kuchokera lachitatu pa 23 mwezi uno wa Julayi kuti mumve zokambirana, malangizo, masewero, zionetsero za maphunziro ndi mafunso okhuza nkhanza za amuna ndi azimayi ndi akatswiri, anthu opulumuka ku nkhanzazi, okhazikitsa lamulo komanso dziko lonse lokhudzidwa ndi nkhanzazi. Zonsezi pa wireless yomwe mumayikonda ya SABC. Imbirani pa nambala 0800 428 428 kuti munene za nkhanzazi kapena kupeza chithandizo. Nkhanza zokhudza amuna ndi azimayi zimatha ndi inu. Uthenga ukufikani kuchokera ku SABC.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Now, several European countries and members of the NATO alliance have issued a joint statement affirming that Greenland belongs to its people and that only Greenland and Denmark have the right to decide its future. Greenland is a vast, sparsely populated Arctic territory that governs itself but remains part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Now, the statement follows reports of growing pressure from the United States, which sees Greenland as a strategically important for national security, and it's not ruled out strong measures to secure influence over the territory. Leaders from France, Germany, Italy, Poland, and Germany have also, Greenland, a strategically important national security, as I said, has not ruled out strong measures to secure influence over the territories. Leaders from France, Germany, Italy, Poland, and Spain, the United Kingdom, and Denmark say that Arctic security is becoming increasingly important. But they do stress that the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and respect for international borders must be upheld.
The White House says President Trump has made acquiring Greenland a priority for the United States, with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio telling congressional lawmakers that Trump planned to buy Greenland and downplayed narratives around taking the territory by force. As European leaders rallied against such talk, Donald Tusk is the Polish Prime Minister.
Nie należy spodziewać się w Paryżu decyzji tych ostatecznych.
There's no doubt that Greenland will also be an unforeseen and unplanned topic. It has stirred up a lot of emotion across Europe, and for Poland, two things are clear and very difficult to reconcile, let's be honest, but they are clearly and unambiguously clear. No member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization should attack or threaten another member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Otherwise, it would lose its meaning if conflict or aggressive actions occurred within the alliance.
After the U.S. military action against Venezuela to depose and capture President Nicolas Maduro, questions abound about what the United States could do next and where. Listen to Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen.
I agree that it is important that there is peace and security in the Arctic region. That is one of the reasons why we are in NATO. Greenland is also a member of NATO. It is a shared responsibility of the Arctic states, including the Kingdom, to ensure that there is security, peace, and freedom in the Arctic region. But Denmark has always been a good ally of the United States. We want to continue to be so. But I also have to address some of what is being said from the American side. And of course, we will not accept a situation where we in Greenland are threatened in this way.
With concerns also being raised by the leader of the U.S. opposition in the Senate, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Is an attack on Colombia now on the table? Or what about Iran? Or Greenland? How is anything of this putting America first? The simple answer is that it's not. If you're a family of four in New York and your health care premiums just doubled on January 1st, what are you supposed to think when you read in the paper that Donald Trump is spending billions attacking Venezuela? If you're struggling to keep a roof over your head, if you're falling behind on your mortgage payment, what are you supposed to think when Donald Trump says we're going to run Venezuela for a while? The American people did not sign up for another round of endless wars.
And were the U.S. to move militarily on Greenland, questions about the future of NATO. Noah Reddington is a Danish analyst.
A lot of people in Denmark and in Greenland, absolutely also in Greenland, they've been shocked about what happened in Venezuela and the capture of Maduro. And if the US is ready to do this in Venezuela, will they be ready to do the same in Greenland? That has been a question asked around, especially in Greenland. The Danish government, the Danish foreign minister requested for a meeting with the Secretary of State in the US, Marco Rubio. And this will be a new thing. This will be the first time that there will be a high-level consultation between Denmark and Greenland and the US, talking about the future of Greenland and how this should be dealt with and how this should be solved. This is a dramatic new step.
As Europe's efforts at strategic autonomy are tested amid ever-shifting geopolitical sands, the statement from European leaders says Arctic security must be achieved collectively and in conjunction with NATO allies, including the United States, but adds that this should be done by upholding the principles of the UN Charter. But very recent history demonstrates that respecting the UN Charter while pursuing unilateral aims often don't line up. In the ever-complex geopolitical world we find ourselves in today. I'm Sherman Bryce-Pease in New York.
The African National Congress, or ANC, political party on Wednesday met with a number of traditional leaders in the Northwest, a province in South Africa. and this in keeping with the African custom and tradition, which requires that traditional leadership be informed and consulted before undertaking any activities in their jurisdiction. The party is hosting its 114th birthday celebrations in Rustenburg, a city in that province, this week. The ANC's President Cyril Ramaphosa met Kgosi Leruo Molutlehi of the Royal Bafokeng Nation, a self-governing community in South Africa's Northwest Province known for its unique traditional rule. Tlantla Katlane has more.
Amandla! Amandla! Viva ANC, viva! Viva! Viva ANC, viva! Viva!
Building up to its birthday bash this weekend, the ANC is marking 114 years since its inception. This time, the festivities are hosted by the Platinum Province. The last time the party was in the Northwest Province was in 2016, when it was still enjoying a majority. But all that has changed after the 2024 elections. Now, with the local government polls approaching, the ANC is leaving nothing to chance. Party President Cyril Ramaphosa paid a visit to Seraleng village in Rustenburg. Excited to see their first in command, residents and party members here took time to raise their concerns.
I would be happy, just like Ramaphosa has paid us a visit, if he could assist with roads and for our children to get employed.
There is no water. There are potholes. We are struggling when it comes to electricity. Everything is a mess. If he could attend to the issue of water.
Here in Seraleng, we have many challenges, like unemployment. That's one thing we would like to see change.
Northwest is amongst the provinces that have been grappling with challenges of poor governance at municipal level. This includes the Rustenburg municipality in the Bojanala Platinum district. Interacting with residents, the ANC president acknowledged the shortcomings they face and vowed that his party is working tirelessly to address them. Ramaphosa also took a detour to pay a courtesy visit to His Majesty Kgosi Leruo Molutlehi of the Bafokeng Nation. Behind closed doors, the two discussed the challenges of their people. The Northwest Province has surpassed the Eastern Cape and now has the highest unemployment rate in the country.
On the week towards celebrating January the 8th, we always go on a pilgrimage to go and see those who lead our people in a variety of ways. And King Molutlehi is the king of Bafokeng here. And his family has played a key role in the struggle and continues to play a key role in the governance of our people here in this province. And it is for that reason that we come on our pilgrimage to come and pay our respects to His Majesty. And we do so that we can also hear some of the challenges that our people are facing in this area.
We are honored and delighted by the visit from the President. We had a chance to speak about many of the issues that had befallen our people, I think also countrywide. Issues such as water shortages, energy, security, and so forth. And so we have agreed that these discussions will continue post the visit. And for that, we want to thank the President and his team.
On Thursday, Ramaphosa and national, provincial and local leaders will cut the ANC's 140th birthday cake at the Witekong Sports Ground. SABC News in Rustenburg.
Hearty laughter and joyous gatherings. Channel Africa celebrates the season with you on the African Perspective.
Right, it's time for us to start the second and final hour of our program, Rise and Shine. And you're with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda. Right now, though, it's time for your news. Good morning once again to you, Tulo. Dwalane Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. South Africa's African National Congress Party turns 114 today. Africa's oldest liberation movement led South Africa to democracy 30 years ago but lost favour over the years. It now governs with a coalition of minority parties in preparation for the local government elections mid-year. The party's top officials, National Executive Committee members, as well as provincial leaders have been engaged in the grassroots mobilisation in some parts of the Northwest Province. Party leaders including President Cyril Ramaphosa will lead the cake-cutting event in Buitikong later today. SABC's Ntebo Mokobo has more.
For the past few days, the ANC leadership rolled out a focus program in a bid to reconnect with communities, listening to their concerns and interacting with traditional leaders ahead of the main celebrations, as President Ramaphosa explains.
We always go on a pilgrimage to go and see those who lead our people in a variety of ways, and we do so that we can also hear some of the challenges that our people are facing in this area.
The President will also visit Kgosi Gasebone in Phela later this morning and went to lay a wreath at the grave of the late ANC Treasurer General and SACP General Secretary Moses Kotane.
The National Consumer Commission in South Africa has announced the recall of a specific batch of NAN Special Pro HA infant formula sold across the country and exported to Namibia and Eswatini. The affected product is an 800-gram tin intended for babies aged 0 to 12 months with the batch number 5160742F3. The recall follows concerns over the possible presence of cereulide, a toxin which poses a food safety risk. Consumers are urged to return the product to the place of purchase for a full refund. Burkina Faso Security Ministry has accused neighbouring Ivory Coast of funding the plan to kill President Ibrahim Traoré. The military government of Burkina Faso says it has foiled a plot to kill Traoré and destabilise the country. There have been multiple coup attempts against Captain Traoré, with the government accusing the Ivory Coast of involvement. The BBC's Chris Iwoko has the story.
In a late-night broadcast, the Security Minister, Mahamadou Tsana, disclosed a leaked military-style video showing soldiers who he said were preparing to assassinate Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Mr. Sana alleged that the conspiracy was orchestrated by former leader Paul-Henri Damiba, who was overthrown by Traoré in 2022. He accused Damiba of mobilizing supporters after securing foreign funding delivered through Ivory Coast. Neither Damiba nor Ivory Coast have commented on the allegations.
A court in Nigeria has granted bail to the country's former Attorney General Abubakar Malami, along with his wife and son, who are facing money laundering charges. Malami was one of the most influential figures in the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari between 2015 and 2023. He was charged in December with 16 counts of money laundering and abuse of office and has been held in prison since then. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges. He previously described his arrest as politically motivated. And finally, Britain's Minister of Defence says it supported U.S. efforts to seize the Russian-flagged tanker in the North Atlantic. The U.S. seized 2 oil tankers with connections to Venezuela yesterday. One vessel was in the Caribbean, the other was boarded in the North Atlantic. Britain's Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander says the U.S. requested air and sea support during the interception of the vessel. She says everything was done in full compliance with international law.
We understand that the vessel in question had been sanctioned by the US when it sought to evade a blockade near Venezuela in December, and the sanctions that the US had applied to this vessel were part of their counter-Iran sanctions regime. And so really this vessel is part of what is known as the Shadow Fleet. It's got a pretty nefarious history, if I'm being honest with you. It's part of a Russia-Iran sanctions evasion access.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, Australia beat England in the Ashes Cup, and Henk Lategan leads the Dakar Rally, and champion Al Raji withdraws. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
Well, lots to cover in this hour. One of those stories is South Africa's liberation movement, the African National Congress Party, or the ANC, who are today marking the 114th anniversary of their founding. We'll be unpacking how far they've gone, as well as the party's priorities for the year, what they'll be focusing on. And we speak to political studies and international relations lecturer at the Northwest University in South Africa on that. My name is Asanda Peta, and if you've just joined us, good morning, and thank you for choosing us to wake up with you.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Yes, indeed, the second and final hour of a shortened version of Rise and Shine this week. We'll be back to our normal 3 hours on Monday. So, you're probably listening to us on channelafrica.co.za, but a reminder that you can also catch us on your mobile apps. Just go into your app store, look for SABC Plus, and you can also find us streaming on your social media platforms. Just look for Channel Africa. We'll also be taking a look at elections in Benin. Everybody's been focused on Uganda next week, but this weekend Benin has its presidential and parliamentary polls taking place, and we get to grips with what the issues are and why these elections are important for the Beninese.
The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's liberation movement, the African National Congress political party, or the ANC, is today marking the 114th anniversary of its founding. This year's celebrations come amid mounting political and governance pressures within the party. The main celebration will take place on Saturday in Rustenburg, that's a city in the northwest province of the country, where the party's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is expected to outline the party's priorities for the year, with a focus on reclaiming lost ground in the upcoming 2026 local government elections. For more on this, we're joined on the line by Dr. Seisman Mutloung, a political studies and international relations lecturer at the Northwest University in South Africa. Dr. Mutloung, thank you for joining us.
Kapela, thanks for having me, Asanda. Good morning.
Our pleasure, and compliments for the new year on that note. Let's talk about how significant this year's January 8th statement will be for the African National Congress, given the party's weakened electoral position nationally as well as locally.
Yeah, I think for the NC, they always want to be seen as a party that is developing, or rather renewing. So they just want to show that strong face. I think this is the very moment where I think in a genuine manner, they want to be seen connecting with the people. I think this is why they went to Northwest Province, which is one of the loyal provinces in the country. They want to respect, give homage to those political communities that have supported them even through tough times. So here is going to that strong base, and to kind of say we really appreciate what you have done for us, and maybe use this province as a springboard again to win at the local elections, that those local elections being a base as well for the next national election. So it is very important for them.
What is likely to come out of this January 8th statement as compared to previous years? And what would you say that President Cyril Ramaphosa needs to focus on in order to restore confidence with the ANC?
I agonize over that, is to think what's different they're going to do or say. If you look at the previous statements, you see a repetition of issues: crime, criminality, basic service provision, electricity included there, and job creation. And then it talks about the internal structural development or renewal of a party that is divided by factions. So when I want to think now what they are going to say that is new, I really find hard to think of a new thing. It is only these issues they're going to repeat, but maybe they want to say, this time we are really, really going to do something, because they've said all that's needed to say. In terms of implementation, that's where they've been lacking. And this is where the root of distrust and discontent among the electorate emerged, especially looking at ANC performance, how it failed to fulfill its promises. That created a condition of apathy throughout the electorate community.
On its theme of renewal and unity, do you believe that factionalism within the ANC undermines then their ability to achieve this unity and renewal?
Yeah, when we talk about renewal, it should be internal, looking at the organizational work. And this is something in the previous years, and you'll hear more as they go to conference. They've been working on that every member should go through political education. I think they want to conscientize their members to understand the core tenets of the organization and commit to them. Then there's renewal externally, where ANC interaction with the communities is. And I think now this aspect of factions we cannot get rid of. It is characteristic to the ANC. And those factions affect ANC governance in municipalities or state institutions where corruption is taking place. And there's now a common statement from Ms. Batabile Dlamini, where you have to deal with malfeasance, and they will say we all have small anyana skeletons, which means everyone has a fault somewhere, has a scandal somewhere. So you cannot hold me accountable because I'll tell you, Asana, oh, remember this about yourself. So that is not just factionalism, it's the impact of corruption, how it has eroded the moral compass of the party. And if they are to renew themselves, those are the big issues they have to look at. Their attitude towards corruption in the state, and that attitude is engendered by themselves. It's issue of virtue. So you want to think of what kind of virtuous leaders will come to redirect ANC. And I find it very difficult to think except the old guard. And these people are getting tired. They cannot come and resuscitate ANC. From there on, the young people seems to have been socialized already into this camp and slate politics of the ANC. It's very difficult to identify a few young people, a group of young people, and say, this will be those who will lead the country into a righteous path.
As you touch on young people, Doctor, we can't take away the fact that the ANC has been a liberation movement. However, we are in an era where liberation credentials no longer yield the electoral support. They don't guarantee electoral support. The voting ages have evolved, the times have evolved. So how should the party redefine itself in an era where its liberation history or liberation credentials don't necessarily or won't necessarily yield to elections results that they want?
I wish they could hear that statement from you and heed it. You realize that the people who are still supporting ANC, and we mentioned Northwest as a province, then you can go to Eastern Cape, you can go to Limpopo. And my observation point, and even in studies that have been done, you realize the people who are old, maybe in the 60s is still young even, 70s, 80s, those grannies and grandpas, maybe parents like my parents who are in their 60s, are people who at the 60s cohort are people who are now starting to think around, should I still commit? But those beyond still pay loyalty, or they vote ANC because they are loyal to its struggle. But the young people have come to be against the ANC. They don't appreciate what it's doing. But it seems again, I think the impact of socialization, having been in homes that support ANC, they find it difficult to trust another political party. Where can they belong? And this is where the opposition should be really working hard on. But the NC seems to understand that dilemma among the voters. And it's using that, I think, as a clutch, and they still continue to use it. And it has garnered support for them. But they have to get out of that mentality to think about how they serve people. But there is a new culture in the ANC. Instead of your liberation struggles abroad against apartheid, they're now appreciating people who raised from COSAS ranks, COSAS and so forth, worked at the BGM and so forth, and provinces. So that legacy of rising from the bottom in the movement gave some people credentials. But now, if you study those people, you realize that they rose through the web of corruption and so forth. So ANC is raising a new generation of corrupt leaders, and those who are clean have not been given an opportunity to lead the movement. And you go to us senior leaders like maybe Woman Touch, and they say, these people have been nominated from their branches, they're voted by their branches, and so forth. And we know the scandals about ghost branches and buying votes as well. So this is very bad in terms of a country, of a party that says it is renewing. But there is this rot of corruption that is a characteristic. I think it's in the blood, of this ANC leaders. So it's very problematic, but also says ANC's future in dominating politics and dominating government is coming to an end very soon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Motlong. We'll leave it there. Ralibuch.
Thank you.
Thanks. That Dr. Seisman Motlong, a political studies and international relations lecturer at the Northwest University in South Africa, reflecting on the legacy of the African National Congress as they approach their January 8 statement, and they're marking 114 years or 114th anniversary of its founding, and looking at how far this liberation movement in South Africa has come.
Channel Africa's got the continent's biggest football moment covered with the 2025-2026 AFCON tournament. Africa at Play with NATO and ETO chairman.
Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2025. Bafana's opening match is against the Portuguese-speaking nation Angola on the 22nd. What can we expect from Hugo Broos and his charges?
When we went to the previous tournament, we sort of had the underdog tag as a country, and we were a little bit humble. Expectations were not as high as they are now at the moment. So I just felt that players were in a good space psychologically. I just feel that Bafana will still be tournament favorites. But coach Hugo Broos has a lot of work psychologically to make sure that players remain focused, humble, and players are playing without any pressure. Because when South African players are very creative, then we know that the outcomes are very good. But when they are under pressure, we know that sometimes the outcomes can be what we don't want to experience.
Coach Tabosono.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time.
The whole population of Africa has been shocked to the depth of its soul.
For 60 years, Channel Africa has been the voice that connects the continent, telling our stories and sharing our vision with the world. This year, we mark 6 decades of broadcast excellence.
60 years of stories, sound, and connection.
6 years of African conversations that matter.
This is 60 years of broadcast excellence.
Broadcast excellence, rooted in Africa's heartbeat and looking boldly into the future. Join Channel Africa as we celebrate 60 years of broadcasting. Still strong, still vibrant, and still giving you the African perspective.
Channel Africa.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Tumeona chapisho mapema hii leo ya kwamba Wizara ya Mambo ya Nje ya nchini Marekani imesema inapitia upya uhusiano wake na nchi ya Tanzania. Pengine taarifa hii imepokelewaje na wananchi wa Tanzania?
Cha kwanza tumeiona taarifa ambayo imetoka hii leo. Sisi kwetu taarifa hii haikutushangaza wala haikutushtua kwa sababu tulishaona taarifa kama hiyo imetoka kwenye ubalozi wa Marekani nchini Tanzania, ikiwa imetolewa na bwana Tom Pigott.
Umezungumza kwa kina kabisa. Haya ni malalamiko ambayo yamekuwa yakijitokeza mara kwa mara. Unadhani sasa wana hoja ya msingi?
Unauliza maswali mazuri sana na maswali ya tafakari. Maswali ambayo hayawezi kujibiwa kwa dakika moja au kwa siku moja. Ni maswali yanayohitaji utafiti, yanayohitaji kusoma.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Yes, indeed, you're listening to Rise and Shine, and right now we focus on polls. Benin goes to the elections this weekend, in elections that may be seen as a key test of the country's democratic direction. On Sunday, voters will elect all 109 members of the National Assembly in legislative polls that will shape Benin's political balance ahead of next year's presidential elections. Now, the chair of Benin's Electoral Authority, Saka Lafia, who heads the Independent National Electoral Commission, has called on political parties, the media and security forces and citizens to help ensure a peaceful and credible vote. But the polls are taking place against a backdrop of growing political tension, especially after Benin's Constitutional Court confirmed that the main opposition group, Les Démocrates, will not be allowed to contest the 2026 presidential election, a ruling that has raised broader questions about political inclusion and competition. Well, to help us understand what's at stake in these elections and what they may mean for democracy in Benin and the wider West African region, we're now joined by Austin Aigbe, who's an advocacy officer at the West African Democracy Solidarity Network. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Good to talk to you again.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning.
For listeners across Africa who may not follow Benin closely, why do these legislative elections matter so much, and what do they tell us about the country's political direction right now?
Thank you. And again, let me state that like you said, for people who may not have followed up what's happening in Benin, Benin is one of the countries in West Africa that has enjoyed democracy. In fact, it's a leading example of democratic transition in West Africa. It has not had coup since 1972, that long a time. The current president has been in power since 2016, hopefully completing his second term in office after 10 years by April, when an election will be held in that country, a presidential election in that country, April 2026. But like you said, January 11th, there will be legislative elections where candidates are supposed to participate and then fill up the members in the National Assembly. But there's a new twist to this year's election. There's been a constitutional amendment process, number one, that has elongated the tenure of the president from 5 years to 7 years. It means that for a second term candidate or president, that will be 14 years, but President Talon will be stepping down after the election in April, after completing a 5-year, 2-term in office. But this is why Benin is important. Like I said, Benin is a very old democracy, old as it because it has survived series of coups until the latest we had in December. That was, of course, it didn't succeed, an attempted coup. Because of the possibility of some form of political repression in that country. As of today, the new law also provides that opposition candidates must have to submit certain amount of signatories, particularly from elected officials. What that means is that for you to participate in the presidential election, you need to have a huge support base. And that has impacted on the main opposition party, like you talked about now. That's in English, it's called the Democrat, Les Démocrates. That party, founded by the former president, it's supposed to be the main opposition, but with the suspension or the ban to participate in the presidential election, has reduced the political competition space in Benin, a country that has been known for high level of competition. With this repression, the main opposition may not contest, and it further weakens the opposition ecosystem in Benin. That electoral code that talked about the nomination process has changed the entire dynamics of Benin's democracy, which is, again, people argue. There's a huge allegation that the CINI, the Election Commission, is handling the sponsorship document unfairly, and that has created some form of mistrust in the system. And again, maybe just to say this quickly, that the exclusion of political party in Benin has raised enough doubt, which is gradually making Benin sliding down democratic backsliding lane. And that is an issue in West Africa, that President Patrick Talon has somehow taken the playbook. In Cote d'Ivoire, opposition were targeted. In Guinea-Bissau, opposition were targeted. In Guinea-Conakry, opposition was targeted. So it's now Benin, again, opposition are targeted. When you weaken opposition politics, it creates a shrinking space for political participation, and it creates an opening that may lead to military intervention, like the one we saw December of last year.
With potentially many voters disenfranchised because their choice may not be participating, is there a danger of civil unrest?
That may happen because Benin is known for the people, the citizens of Benin are known for protecting their democracy. That is why the coup of December 2025 failed, when the military leaders went on television and started asking the citizens to come out and support them. The citizens recognizing that they were not going the route of military regime, but they will go the route of peaceful assembly. But as we speak today, peaceful assembly, peaceful association, freedom of those kind of gathering has been reduced. There's high level of repression. So when people eventually turn out to protest ahead of the election, and there is crackdown from military actors, it may snowball to a violent action in Benin that may end up getting to a point where we don't want to get to. Failed democracy, introduction of military. And I think that's where President Talon needs to be very active. And ECOWAS, too, there's need for proper coordination in a way that opposition candidates, opposition political parties have a free, fair share in the landscape. The new law, the electoral code, does not improve democracy. It is shrinking democracy in Benin, a country recognized largely for its democratic consolidation. Over these years, Nigeria got away from military regime in 1999. Benin in Ghana was around 1997. But Benin has enjoyed democracy for too long, but this is not the right time for any form of militarization in the country.
Austin, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much indeed. We always greatly appreciate your insights, and let's hope that the Beninese find their way and reignite their democratic principles. Thanks so much indeed for your time and your insights.
Thank you very much. Always. Thank you.
That's Austin Ayigbe, an advocacy officer at the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network, expressing concern about the direction that democracy is taking in Benin, a country that's enjoyed democratic strength for decades now. It's 7:30. It's time for your news headlines. Good morning, Jolene Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Peter. Making headlines. South Africa's African National Congress Party turns 114 today. Several organizations will today convene at the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria, South Africa, to protest against the attacks on Venezuela. And a new report by the UN Human Rights Office says that what it calls Israel's systematic discrimination against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank has been intensifying. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in now with what's happening in the world of sports as we say good morning to Fikile Lingwati.
Channel Africa's got the continent's biggest football moment covered with the 2025-2026 AFCON tournament. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning again, Asanda. Australia won the final Ashes test against England by 5 wickets to seal a dominant 4-1 victory after a grueling series, sending the retiring Usman Khawaja out on a high. The Navy hosts saw wickets tumble as they chased their 160 target, which they reached after lunch on day 5 with Cameron Green not out 22 and Alex Carey on 16 at the Sydney Cricket Ground SCG. For England, it was the final chapter in a miserable series. Australia lost openers Travis Head and Jake Weatherhead, along with captain Steve Smith and Khawaja, who made 6 in his final knock before retirement. Manus Labuschagne dropped on 20, compiled 37 before needlessly running himself out to give Ben Stokes' men a flicker of hope as they reduced Australia to 121 for 5. But victory was never seriously in doubt after England were dismissed for 342 on the back of Jacob Bethel's stylish 154. On to football news. World Football's governing body FIFA has announced that the AI-enabled 3D avatars will be created of every player competing at this year's Men's World Cup. FIFA's official technology partner for the FIFA World Cup 2026 and the FIFA Women's World Cup 2027, Lenovo, provides AI-enabled devices, infrastructure, software, solutions, and services at FIFA's 2 flagship competitions and across World Football's governing body. They are intended to help improve video assistant referee decisions. The process will see all 1,200 players have a digital scan taken of their bodies. Reflection, addressing problem areas, and planning. Those are the 3 things on Bafana Bafana coach Hugo Bruce's to-do list for the immediate future. South Africa touched down to a lukewarm welcome at the OR Tambo International Airport yesterday morning, following the early exit from the Africa Cup of Nations football tournament in Morocco. Luck was not on Bafana Bafana's side throughout the tournament. Even the video assistant referee's decision went against them. It played a role in the disappointing campaign, but goalkeeper Ricardo Goss says that can't be used as an excuse.
Expected so much from ourselves. And like I said, I keep saying that the other teams have done their homework. When you even saw the Egypt game, they were sitting back, which means we've actually done something good. We put up a good side, and I think now it's just to unlock those cagey defenses. And I even think against Cameroon we should have been 3-0 up within the first 20 minutes.
And on to motor racing. Saudi Arabia's Dakar Rally champion Yazid Al-Raj declared an end to his title defense and withdrew as South African Henk Lettergan dominated the fourth stage for Toyota and took over at the top. Al-Raji had been struggling from the start in his customer entry Toyota Hilux and was already 19th when he withdrew with technical issues 234 kilometers into the 452-kilometer part of a two-day marathon stage around Al Ula. The Saudi explained later that he had lost half an hour with the two punchers and with nearly half the stage remaining until the biovac and having to go slow with no further spare available. He had called it a day. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Cling cling. Turn up the African vibe, Africa style. Tune in on the Channel Africa app or log on to our website, channelafrica.co.za.
So we're in the midst of the AFCON, the African Cup of Nations, taking place at the moment. And I've got to take you back to 2010 because a bizarre thing happened at that time. Togo's national football team was attacked during the African Cup of Nations. The team bus was attacked by gunmen in the Cabinda province of Angola, and the separatist group FLEC claimed responsibility. And this tragic event led to Togo's withdrawal from the tournament and highlighted security challenges in the region. Luckily, we haven't had to see similar events taking place since then, but really strange things that happened, as I said, 2010 during the AFCON, which is currently underway right now in Morocco.
Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store. 9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the move with Palisa Tau and Benjamin Mushatama.
Now, when you go to the hospital, there's medical attention that you need, and that's the only experience you're expecting to have. If you are a transgender person, sometimes those experiences can be marred by the demand of trying to understand your gender, your sexuality, and not particularly getting the assistance that you need.
One time, I was sexually abused by someone who used to live next door to my house. So when I went to the police to report, I was in a weave, I was wearing a dress, and when I got there, the police person that helped me said to me, obviously we're gonna rape you because why do you walk around looking like trying to be a woman when you are a man? And after that, the person just walked scot-free.
How do you deal with that? Because there's a double barrel abuse there. So it's not even double barrel, there's kind of multi-dimensional forms of abuse.
I think one thing that I will tell you about trans people is we are strong, not because we want to be strong, but because we don't have an option. It is what it is. Because the struggles that we face each and every day are like unimaginable.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
A report released by the United Nations Human Rights Office has detailed the impact of Israel's laws, policies and practices on every aspect of daily life for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem. The report warns that Israel is violating international law, requiring states to prohibit and eradicate racial segregation and apartheid. The report further found that the Israeli authorities treat Israeli settlers and Palestinians residing in the West Bank under two distinct bodies of law and policies, resulting in unequal treatment on a range of critical issues, including movement and access to resources such as land and water. To talk to us further on the report, we're joined now on the line by head of the United Nations Human Rights Office in the occupied Palestinian territory, Ajith Sungai. Ajith, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Can you please elaborate on what you found?
Well, thanks. First of all, we have to put this report in the context of what's happening in broader West Bank. In large parts, the Israeli settlers, with the backing from the Israeli government and the Israeli Defense Force, is basically taking over the land from Palestinians and pushing them out of the land that belongs to Palestinian community, along with the settler violence, burning of villages and towns, and so forth. Meanwhile, differential policies and practices are put in place and implemented for Israeli settlers who are much more protected with a system that respects human rights versus Palestinians who are dominated, who are racially discriminated, who have very difficult challenges to get their basic human rights. So we're talking about segregation, we're talking about racial discrimination, and there is a comparison of the system of apartheid that we have seen in the past.
So in the report, you also speak of how constrained and insecure life has become for Palestinians. Can you explain further on that?
Absolutely. I mean, one thing we need to remember is such settler violence, such attacks by the Israeli Defense Force, the land grab has been happening for many years. But over the last 2.5 years or so, especially since the 7th of October 2023, when the assault on Gaza started, the focus of the international community shifted to Gaza. There was a lot more happening in West Bank, which went, I would say, a little underreported, which includes massive expulsion of Palestinians from their houses, refusal to grant them permission to build their houses on their own land, evictions of people, excessive use of force. And for all these, violations and crimes, zero accountability for the Israeli Defense Force personnel.
The report found that the Israeli authorities treat Israeli and Palestinians residing in the West Bank under two distinct bodies of law and policies. How has this led to unequal treatment? You touched on racial segregation and apartheid.
Look, every aspect of a Palestinian living in West Bank is impacted by such differential treatment and application of laws. We can talk about movement, and movement is a very, very important aspect. If you cannot move freely, which the Palestinians cannot and Israelis can, then every aspect of your life is impacted, whether it is going to school, your business, the economy, family, keeping it together, the community, health access, and so forth, including the very, very important resources such as water and other aspects, including the herding communities to their farmland, etc., has a massive impact on every aspect of the Palestinians' lives, which is not the case for an Israeli settler living inside West Bank. So we are talking about differential treatment, which helps Israeli settlers, whereas it puts down the Palestinian community.
You mentioned also that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the separation, the segregation and subordination are intended for a permanent amount of time, or to be permanent, in order to maintain this oppression and domination of Palestinians. By the look at the situation now, will this be possible as you see it?
It is unfortunately happening. And we take a very careful analysis and a position. However, if you listen to some of the ministers from the Israeli cabinet, they're openly saying that some of these policies have been put in place, including the expansion of settlements, moving in Israeli settlers into West Bank, treating them differently, for the purpose of making sure that there is no Palestinian state, which means this is there for a long-term and permanent reason, not to reverse it for any particular reason in any short period.
So what role then can the international law play in intervening in this type of thing?
Look, I think the report has some very clear recommendations, including for the Israelis. First of all, they have to look at the International Court of Justice decision in 2024, which asks Israel first to stop the expansion of settlements, pull Israeli settlers out of the West Bank, put an end to these policies and practices that discriminate between Israeli settlers and Palestinians, and then calls upon third parties, which is basically the international community and member states, every country around the world. That includes the countries in Africa, countries in Europe, in Asia, and other parts of the globe, to say what is their role? Are they contributing to this kind of racial discrimination? It asks member states to reconsider supplying arms which could be used in human rights violations in the West Bank. There are companies inside West Bank which are based in Europe and other parts of the world. So it asks member states to look into these aspects and take actions to make sure that they're not supporting such racial segregation and discrimination that raises very serious concerns and draws parallels to apartheid.
What other recommendations are in your report outside international intervention, maybe those that can be done on the ground and immediately, as well as on the supply of arms? How would that be controlled in terms of finding the exact information about where these are coming from?
Look, I mean, countries know their negotiations, cooperations with Israel. I mean, all the countries know. A lot of that information is also publicly available. So they will have to do a little bit of a due diligence on their own part. A lot of member states know who is cooperating with Israel. It's a question about them taking a very principled position on this and saying, sorry, at this point in time, it has reached a stage which is beyond acceptable. This has been going on for years now. We have to put an end. So use their leverage to push Israel to stop this. And second, using leverage means also sometimes stopping the supply of weapons. So that information is available in public. Member states know who's doing what. So it's for them to take that position. The other aspect on the ground is, first of all, it's very much in control of the Israeli government. If they want to put an end to this today, they can absolutely do. That's not their intention, unfortunately. And that's why this report becomes very important, to show that this is not just a small group of young kids going around in West Bank like the government sometimes makes people believe, creating this, but it is done with the backing of the government, with the backing of the Israeli Defense Force and other instruments which is at the disposal of the government. So if the government wants to stop it today, it can. It can take action for violations committed on ground by the Israeli Defense Force and others. It can ask its ministers to stop pushing policies and putting in money for the expansion of settlements. It can pull out settlers if it wants to pull out settlers. It can end settlement expansion if it wants to end. However, Israel's objective has been made very clear by the government, which is annex more and more of West Bank land to the extent that creation of a state of Palestine becomes impossible.
Ajith, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for your valuable insights and for unpacking this very important report for us.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure, Ajith. Sungai is the head of the United Nations Human Rights Office in the occupied Palestinian territory. He was joining us on the line. And
Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
After Rise and Shine comes On the Move on Channel Africa. And let's find out what's coming up on the show today as we say good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Morning.
Doing good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're just surprised that next week's halfway of January already.
Imagine.
Scary, eh?
That is scary. I mean, before we know it, it's another December and then we start all over again.
Gosh, but you have a 4-hour show coming up.
We do.
I'm sure you guys are ready to get back to normalcy.
We really are. All right, today in the first hour, I mean, you know, there are things that school teaches us and there are things that life teaches us. But it's unfortunate that the two don't always connect, because we learn so many like hard skills. This is how you'll make it in life. But then when you get into life, you lack some of the skills that are actually necessary. Like, you know, saying no without over-explaining, having difficult conversations, you know, when conflict escalates, and all of these other soft skills. So we're going to be talking about that, how we're able to learn these other soft skills so that we can navigate adulthood in a better way, things that we don't get to learn in the classrooms.
Gosh, that's fascinating. But I think there's a cultural dimension also that needs to be overcome, which is, you know, how young black women are conditioned in terms of what they can say, what they're allowed to say, what their roles are. So that'll be fascinating. I would love to hear that.
Absolutely. Well, in today's second hour, we're speaking about social fatigue. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have it around this time of the year, because December is a big socializing time, right? So now you're getting a call, it's January, and someone saying, hey, you know, let's have a games night. Hey, I'd like to see you for lunch. And you're just so done with people. So we'll chat a little bit about that.
Taking some space to recalibrate.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes it's actually, you need a holiday from the holiday, because it's just
you
so
always
much
need a
happening.
holiday from the holiday.
So that's On the Move, coming up after the 9 o'clock news in about 9 minutes' time.
Let's just do it.
Your life just got easier. Get the Channel Africa app and take us wherever you go. Catch the latest news, enjoy your favorite shows, stream the music you love, and stay connected to the continent. All in one spot, right in your pocket. Simple, quick, and always with you. The Channel Africa app. Download it now on iOS and Android. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
US President Donald Trump says that the interim authorities in Venezuela would be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of what he termed high-quality sanctioned oil to the United States. This in a move that has already irritated China. Posting on Truth Social, Trump says that the oil will be sold at its market price in a deal that's estimated to be worth around $2 billion. Now, the deal with Caracas could divert supplies earmarked for China. Earlier, the Washington Post reported that the U.S. government assessed that around 75 people died in Caracas during the U.S. military's raid to capture deposed President Nicolas Maduro. Sherwin Bryce-Peace has more for us from New York.
President Trump suggested that the money paid for the oil by the United States would then be controlled by him to ensure the benefit to the people of Venezuela and the United States. The Venezuelan government and the state-owned oil and gas company PDVSA have not provided additional comment. Trump further indicated that he tasked his Energy Secretary Chris Wright to execute the plan immediately, saying the oil would be taken in storage ships and brought directly to unloading docks in the United States. The agreement, if confirmed, provides a strong signal that the Venezuelan government is responding positively to Trump's demand to provide total access to Venezuela's oil industry to U.S. oil companies or risk more military intervention.
Venezuela right now is a dead country. We have to bring it back, and we're going to have big investments by the oil companies to bring back the infrastructure. And the oil companies are ready to go. They're going to go in, they're going to rebuild the infrastructure. You know, we built it to start off with many years ago. They took it away. You know, we were ready for a second wave. We were all set to go, but we don't think we're going to need it.
Venezuela has millions of barrels of oil loaded on tankers and in storage tanks that it has been unable to ship due to a blockade on exports imposed by the United States since mid-December. Karsten Brzezinski is the chief economist at ING Financial Services.
I also expect the commodity market, especially oil prices, to go down in the expectation by investors that there will be more oil produced out of Venezuela over the next month. It's true that it's going to take a while before actual oil production in Venezuela will really pick up again. But we know that markets very often trade expectations, trade forecasts, and in this world, they will expect that oil production out of Venezuela will pick up over the next month and years. For Europe, if oil prices were to go down, this is definitely some positive news, because lower oil prices would also help bring inflation down and would also help the industry in Europe to bring some support and would lower production costs.
And while the markets respond positively, geopolitical tensions are rising after the United States earlier Wednesday seized a US-sanctioned, Russian-flagged, Venezuela-linked oil tanker in the North Atlantic after a 2-week pursuit. 2 other oil tankers were seized by the US last month.
When looking at the impact on financial markets, one needs to distinguish between the short-term and the longer-term impact. In the shorter term, I expect financial markets to react with some kind of relief. Especially oil markets should react with lower prices. But in the longer run, what happened over the weekend is another example of the big geopolitical shift we're currently in. A geopolitical shift in which it is all of a sudden the stronger countries trying to take as much as possible, leaving aside all kind of international laws and international agreements. And this geopolitical shift to a world which will be dominated by the US and China, on the other hand, is something that will keep financial markets busy for a long while.
China reacted earlier to the expected diversion of Venezuela's oil to the United States through Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning.
The United States has brazenly resorted to the use of force against Venezuela and demanded that America first be applied when Venezuela disposes of its own oil resources. This is a typical act of bullying, a serious violation of international law, and a grave infringement on Venezuela's sovereignty that also severely undermines the rights of the Venezuelan people. China strongly condemns this. I would like to stress that the legitimate rights and interests of China and other countries in Venezuela must be protected.
The US Energy Secretary Chris Wright has also announced that the United States would indefinitely going forward sell the oil production coming out of Venezuela into the market. The White House is on Friday expected to host representatives from several energy companies and oil producers to ventilate the question of investments in Venezuela's oil sector. Raising crude output from the country now appears to be a top objective of the Trump administration, despite lingering concerns around violations of that country's sovereignty. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
All right, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, thanks very much indeed for that update. And I've got a feeling that Donald Trump is going to get some pushback now from the Americans, because what he's doing in Venezuela is going to cost money, even though all this oil is coming across, but we'll be monitoring that. Another big event that's taking place today is the African National Congress, and it's 114 years old. Back in 1912, that's 114 years ago, it was called the South African Native National Congress, and it was founded primarily to promote the rights of black people, South Africans in the country. And in 1923, that's when it changed its name to the African National Congress, the party that we now know. And it's the oldest political party on the continent, and one of the oldest political parties in the world, and one that still enjoys some power in government. I wouldn't say it's the governing party anymore, given that it's in a coalition and it failed for the first time to get its majority. So today, the birthday of the oldest political party on the continent, the African National Congress, and we've been talking about its January 8th statement during the course of the program. So we'll keep you up to date on that as we say happy birthday to the ANC.
And then we say goodbye as Rise and Shine, and we'll catch you tomorrow bright and early at 6 a.m. on Channel Africa. I'm Asanda Beda, and that's Peter Ndoro signing out.